Welcome back to Worldview. Now, once again, our good friend Robert Hunziker managed to scare me to death over this past weekend with his most recent article, Starvation, Riots, War, the Sleeping Climate Giants. Now, in that article, he begins to talk about climate disaster scenarios that not many of us are thinking about, but we really should. Simply, as climate change progresses, global food production is vastly altered. We're already watching the U.S. breadbasket burn with daily triple-digit temperatures, and Russia has again canceled all of their grain exports. We've been having an unseasonably warm summer here in the U.K., while the U.S. Northeast has been deluged with temperatures well below normal, and this so-called weird weather has become the norm. So we wanted to talk with Robert Hunziker about it here on Worldview. He's a freelance writer for a number of progressive publications, including our own UK progressive magazine, Z Magazine, In These Times, Epica, the European Project on Ocean Acidification, Occupy Wall Street, Progressive Radio Network, and the Huffington Post, just to name a few. Now, Robert's an environmental activist and writer whose personal mission is to simplify the understanding of climate change through his essays and articles. He writes based upon his research of the science, and he has a unique ability to cut through the scientific balancing act jargon, which inevitably loses the public's attention. So he helps us to understand the severity of the larger problem. Robert Hunziker, welcome back to Worldview.
Hi, Dennis. Thanks so much. Great to be with you again.
It's great to have you. Now, you've written another amazing piece here. So how long will it be before you in California and I in Wales start fighting over the bits of grain to make our bread on our respective continents? I mean, how big is this global food production risk?
Well, it seems to be coming much faster than anybody would want. In fact, I think what we've got is this is a window into what global warming really looks like. And we're getting an early preview. There's no doubt now science has proven that the warming Arctic, which is warming 2 to 3 times faster than the rest of the planet, is disrupting the jet streams, which reside at 35,000 to 40,000 feet, and causing these big loops in the slowdown of the jet streams. As a result, and because the Arctic is essentially the air conditioner for the northern hemisphere, it's causing these disruptive extreme climate events. The two biggest and most harmful are droughts and flooding. And it's not that we haven't had droughts and flooding over the centuries, but all of a sudden they're all bunching up. We're getting them much quicker, and they're much more elongated, lasting much longer. They just stay put. You know, I've got a laundry list of drought conditions we could talk about that have severely impacted food prices around the world. And we also have clear evidence from major studies done at MIT and the World Development Report that link food prices with food riots. In fact, 2007 to 2009, there were 70 food riots in the world. There's also pretty good research has been done that there's a causal effect between food prices and the Arab Spring. Now, if you want to run through a laundry list, maybe we just take a quick snapshot of some of these drought conditions. Do you want to do that?
That's fine. Yeah, let's just hear just a few of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the United States, in 2012, we had the worst drought since 1950. Now, what you're going to notice when I talk about these is it's the worst case in decades, and in some cases in 200 years. China, for example, is having the worst drought in 200 years in southern China and the northwest China.
Well, let's go back to China for just a quick second here, because we've talked about that in the past, and you know, there's literally between India and China, pretty much all in the same longitudes there. That's a third of the globe's population. And you talked about the melting glaciers in one of our previous interviews and said 80% are gone. And if this last 20% goes, I mean, they're without water. What will we see then?
Oh, I don't even know where you go with that, Dennis, because if you lose the glaciers, 80% of the irrigation for the crops in China depend upon the Tibetan Plateau, and it's 60% for India. They're losing those glaciers very, very rapidly.
But that's 2 billion. That's 2 billion people in, you know, a very large geographic area, essentially without water.
Well, consider this too, Dennis, that 1/4, 25% of the arable land in China has turned to desert. Now that's a loud message, loud and clear. Could you imagine if that were to happen in the United States of America? Do you think that the politicians in the United States would then take a harder look at global warming and what can be done about it? I think they would. I think the public pressure would be so strong.
You would think so, and yet a year ago I stood in western China in the Xinjiang province in the middle of the Gobi Desert where the temperatures were 120 degrees Fahrenheit, yet there was one water supply that ran from the glaciers all the way from the North Pole, basically right down through this one valley. It was the main agricultural center for this entire region. It produced all of the grapes and all of the wine. And right next to it, they were doing hydraulic fracturing as far as the eye could see. There were mine after mine after mine. So you begin to wonder, even in a situation like China where there's this clear evidence that there's a problem, are people going to wake up and see it even in the United States if that would happen?
That's a good question, and I wish I had a ready answer for you, but I don't. However, if you do look around the globe at what's happening with this drought situation, it's really serious. India's had 2 droughts over the last 4 years. At one point in time, they had the world's largest outage of power for 1 billion people because of the drawdown of their hydropower in conjunction with too much work for the existing power plant. The rainfall in the Punjab region, which is their breadbasket, was off 70%. Syria had a 5-year drought. They lost 60% of their crop over the last 4 years. Russia's had 2 droughts the last 5 years. They halted wheat production. Then you can look at the other situation, flooding. Which has become extreme. Look at Central Europe this year. The farmers are afraid they're going to lose an entire season's crops because of the flooding. In the UK today is importing wheat. The UK has always been self-sufficient with wheat. Why? Since 2011, they've had a series of flooding.
And now we're looking at a potential drought here in the UK. I mean, it's just insane. And yet, you were talking about one part of India to give you a science perspective about the drought. Yet in Delhi, they had those massive floods over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's correct. So it seems to be one or the other, and always to an extreme. And there's some pretty smart people who are forecasting possible collapse of our food production system. Tim Benton, for example, who's a professor at University of Leeds in England of ecology, recently addressed a forum in the UK, and he talked about a collapse of our food production system on a localized basis. He can foresee where this may start to happen. And Central Europe may be a good example of that. They may have, at least for 1 year, collapsed their food production system.
You were also talking about the impact of food and food rioting and on prices. Share with us a little bit the information that's on that chart about what has been happening to food prices and all of this information.
Yeah, well, the UN Food and Agricultural Organization provides a chart of the price of foods in the world. For example, if you were to look at that chart going back the last 25 years, it's pretty much a flat line until you get into, say, 2007, 2008, 2009. That's when you had 60 food riots around the world. Then, 2010, 2011, another spike up in food prices in the world. That's when you had the Arab Spring. So if you look at the relationship between food prices and food riots, political turmoil, potentially war, there's a direct causal relationship between the two. So we may be setting the stage. In fact, food pricing today, by the way, is right back to those same high levels on that chart as it was 2007 to 2009 and during the Arab Spring. So we may be setting ourselves up for a situation where you have a calamitous world because people get priced out of the marketplace for food. There are a lot of places in the world where people are spending 40, 50, 60% of their income on food. And where do you go with that? This is all goes back to what? It all goes back to climate change, and the climate change that we're experiencing derived from where? Well, basically, it's too much CO2 into the atmosphere, too much methane, and the methane problem is becoming extremely severe. I wish there were a solution to this. I guess the best thing that can happen is that people like yourself can put the word out, and hopefully this word's going to spread, and people are going to force their own politicians to do something about it, because things can be done.
There's more to come on this subject in part 2 when we sit down with Robert Hunziker to talk about all of the activity that's going on up in the Arctic and ways in which there are even more scary things going on up there. We'll be back in segment 2 when Worldview continues. Welcome back to Worldview. Once again, we have Robert Hunziker, the environmental journalist, here on the program to help us understand a little bit of what's going on. He recently wrote an article for UK Progressive magazine, called "Starvation, Riots, War: The Sleeping Climate Giant."
It all goes back to climate change, and the climate change that we're experiencing derived from where? Well, basically, it's too much CO2 into the atmosphere, too much methane, and the methane problem is becoming extremely severe. I wish there were a solution to this. I guess the best thing that can happen is that people like yourself can put the word out, and hopefully this word's going to spread, and people are going to force their own politicians to do something about it, because things can be done.
Now, Robert, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on at the Arctic. I mean, we've talked a lot in the past about, the melting of the ice cover up there in that part of the world and its consequences. Let's talk a little bit about the AMEG situation and how you have these sniffer planes out there. I think a lot of people aren't aware about what's going on and what their mission is to flying over that melting permafrost, and why is it we should worry about this? AMEG stands for Arctic Methane Emergency Group, which consists of a group of the most esteemed climate scientists in the world. And they have really put out an alert to the governments of the world that the survival of humanity's at play here, at risk here, if you will, because of this warming of the Arctic and losing the albedo, which is the reflective surface of the Arctic, and so it absorbs more heat, and you get this self-feeding effect. The self-feeding effect and the really big risk here, and what they're so alarmed about, is that it's jarring loose methane that for millennia has been trapped either in the permafrost or in what they call methane hydrates. Methane hydrates, that's ice that's trapped methane from millions of years ago. Help us please to understand why methane is such an important gas and what its release means.
Well, it's 100 times more potent than CO2. Most people are familiar with carbon dioxide or CO2, which is released by power plants when they burn coal, for example. But methane is 100 times, for the first 10 years of its release into the atmosphere, 100 times more powerful than CO2. Which means that the global warming effect is going to be exaggerated and accelerated because of this release of methane. They're finding plumes that are 1/2 mile wide out in the Arctic Sea, where the sea is bubbling. You see bubbles coming up over 1/2 mile. That's methane coming up from the warmth that's been absorbed into the ocean. Into the Arctic Ocean. There is currently a study being done by NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory out of Pasadena, California, where they fly a C-23 Sherpa aircraft 500 feet off the ground. That's extremely low flying. They call it flying in the mud. And they're taking readings. This is a 5-year study to find where this is if it's happening and how serious it is. And then there are labs that they send the results to in Boulder, Colorado, that are quite sophisticated. The instrumentation is quite sophisticated. So far, based upon the first full year of studies, they're somewhat alarmed by what they're seeing. Large plumes of methane are being released from the permafrost in the Arctic, up in Alaska, for example. And that's going to accelerate global warming, and it may lead at some point in time in the distant future to an extinction event where you lose maybe 40–50% of the species in the world.
Once again, we're speaking with the environmental journalist Robert Hunziker here on Worldview Show. You talk about you talked in the last segment that we did about the changes in the jet stream. Like, for example, I know we've seen a period of 90-degree temperatures up in Alaska, which seemed, totally absurd, but it has indeed happened. And, I'm worried and want to understand the relationship of the jet stream to these superstorms that we've been having, like Hurricane Sandy, for example, or the Oklahoma tornadoes. These all appear to be the new norm in weather. Are these related to this methane release in the Arctic, or is this something else?
Yes, it's all interrelated. The climate and weather is all interrelated. It always has been, always will be. The difference between the two is climate is long-term weather. Weather itself is a short-term event. The methane release is directly related to that, and it's only going to make it worse and worse. The jet streams are impacted by the warmth or the coolness in the Arctic, and you've probably heard hundreds of times the news forecasters say, the people in the Midwest of the United States, brace yourselves, you've got an Arctic cold front coming down. Well, one of the things that's going to happen, just to give you an example of the food impact, is in Kansas, for example, they grow winter wheat. They need freezing conditions for winter wheat. Those kind of freezing conditions that come down from the Arctic are actually warming up. And so it actually disturbs the winter wheat crop.
Sure, without a frost, that winter wheat crop won't grow. I mean, we used to grow it in the Netherlands on my father-in-law's farm. Let me jump in with one last question here, because we are running a bit out of time. I mean, there was an article recently in Rolling Stone magazine by my favorite writer of all time, Matt Taibbi. We've seen his work on the financial crisis, but he did talk about the theoretical end of the city of Miami, and there was a level of realism there, having lived in that city or near it, that I could easily see. He talks about the aquifer, the Biscayne aquifer, that large freshwater body of water underground disappearing. He talks about storms as early as 2025, flooding out, taking out all the fresh water. Indeed, the entire city is left underwater and unable to pump it out. I really think that this was something that is more than possible. What other cities and what other areas are at great risk? And again, is this related to the Arctic melt and other parts of this climate change?
Well, it's definitely related to it. And if, in fact, it continues, you're going to see the massive ice sheets, which are Greenland, Antarctica, and Patagonia, continue to lose mass. And as they do that, the oceans are going to expand. And by the way, as the oceans heat up, the water actually expands as well. So who's at risk? Try New York City and Los Angeles and Mumbai and Tokyo and all the major coastal cities of the world. Can this happen quickly? Scientists talk about something called a tipping point. And once you hit a tipping point, there's no turning back. And then things happen very, very rapidly. Could that happen in our lifetimes? It really could. It really could. Nobody knows the answer. But if you get to the tipping point where things start to cascade, where you have these ice sheets cascading, and we've seen early signs of that already in the Antarctica and also in Greenland. By the way, Greenland's temperatures are up 5 degrees Fahrenheit over the last decade. So beware and brace yourself, because life is going to get more difficult. It's going to be more difficult.
Well, here in the UK, we have several ministries that on one hand are beginning contingency planning for global famine and mass population displacement events, while the other half of the UK government is embracing, wholeheartedly shale gas fracturing. So go figure, it's all crazy. Once again, Robert, you've managed to scare the living daylights out of me. I hope someday to have you on the program. We can just have a friendly chat about, cliff beach walks. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We've been speaking with Robert Hunziker. He's an environmental freelance journalist who writes features for our sister publication, UK Progressive Magazine. You're watching Worldview with Dennis Campbell. Stay right here.